Namaste, Vanakkam, Swagatam, Namaskaram, and welcome everyone to this concluding session of Satsangha 999. And when I took up this concept of Satsangha 999, and we looked at 9 sessions of 90 minutes across 9 weeks, I thought, what should be the final session of this? And I had a brainwave and I just put it as Kaivalya. And the last few days, I've been wondering what I'm going to talk about. Because Kaivalya is something that I have not experienced. And it's all hypothetical. It is theoretical to me. So I'm going to be exploring something that I have not experienced, this highest state of liberation. Yet, based on the teachings of Maharishi Patanjali, who to me is the most authentic source of this type of teaching, I'm going to try to explore it to the best of my ability. It is one of the topics that whenever we come to teaching it in the ashram, in the yoga darshana, I always make a disclaimer at the beginning that I don't claim to have achieved Kaivalya. I don't claim to know anything about Kaivalya, but as a sadhaka, as an aspiring yogi for whom, as my Facebook profile tells you, aspiring for Kaivalya, it is definitely on my wish list. So something that deeply intrigues me, and I'm going to be sharing a lot of the thoughts on that today. It is an amazing concept. Let's begin with the invocation of the grace of the Gurus. Om Tadparamparaya Vidmahe Jnanalingeshwaraya Dhimahi Tanno Guruh Prachodayate Om. Om Yoga Maharshi Dr. Swami Geetananda Giri Guru Maharaj Ki Jai. Kaivalya, a very short word, and yet has within it the whole universe and beyond. Kaivalya is technically understood to be emancipation. It is understood as liberation. It is a state where nothing else remains. We find this in Adi Shankara's Dashasloki. Tadeko Vashishta Shiva Kevaloham. That when you have negated everything that is not real, you ultimately will be established in that which remains, that alone that shines forth when everything else has been removed. Well, we are talking of the same thing here when we talk about the word Kaivalya. Because in the state of Kaivalya, the final liberation, we are back home, sweet home. There is no more any duality. There is no more any dichotomy. There is no more any you or me. There is only a state of oneness. It becomes all one. There is no two. And again, Adi Shankara in Dasasloki talks about how can there be a second when it is only one? A very beautiful phrase. How can there be a second when you are in a state of oneness? This is the theme that is much needed by humanity, a theme of unitiveness, cohesiveness, oneness. And that is why these teachings of Maharishi Patanjali are as, if not more, relevant to humankind than they have ever been in the history of humankind. Maharishi Patanjali gives the entire fourth chapter of his teachings, the fourth pada, to Kaivalya. And the fourth pada, Adha Kaivalya Padaha, is an exploration of the highest state of liberation. But Patanjali gives them in 34 verses. Now, if you go back and look at it, you have 50 plus verses for each of the Samadhi Pada, Sadhana Pada, and even Vibhuti Pada has a huge number of verses. 34 for Kaivalya. So quantity-wise, Kaivalya Pada is the shortest, but quality-wise, it is the highest. And people tend to quantify everything. I was recently watching a dear friend of mine and how he was quantifying everything in his life. To such an extent, I was wondering whether he was on his deathbed and wanted to quantify and make an inventory to leave behind for people left behind. You don't quantify respect. You don't quantify wisdom. You don't quantify love. You don't quantify gratitude. You don't quantify a spiritual experience. They are all qualitative. And qualitative experiences are not to be counted. They are to be experienced. Kaivalya is one of them. And that is why 34 short verses doesn't mean Kaivalya Pada is not important. Now, as a student, we often have a tendency to prepare those chapters that will come in the exam. Learn those lessons from which the maximum questions will be asked. And that is why most yoga schools, they totally don't even touch the Kaivalya Pada. Most yoga schools, they introduce the students to Samadhi Pada and Sadhana Pada, and even Vibhuti Pada after the first few verses is not taken. The first few verses are required to understand Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi. That is why they are taken, for no other purpose. And then after that, it's as if Kaivalya Pada doesn't exist at all. And I'm like, that is the whole purpose of yoga. And yet people come out as qualified yoga teachers without knowing what is the purpose of yoga at all. So they think the purpose of yoga is to have a piece of paper that allows you to get yoga insurance to teach some people who come so that you can run your yoga studio. The purpose of yoga is Kaivalya. The purpose of yoga is Kaivalya. Everything else is secondary. So what is this Kaivalya? Let me go straight to the last verse of the Yoga Sutras. See how good you are. You're also spiritually enlightened that we don't have to go through all the previous verses. We are jumping straight to the last verse. You know, whenever you buy one of those crime thriller novels and you go right to the last pages, you know, something like that. Well, I'm doing it with a purpose. Patanjali, my dear Superman Pat, he says, Purushartha Shunyanam Gunanam Pratiprasava Kaivalyam Swarupa Pratishtava Chiti Shakti Riti. That is the actual chanting. Purushartha Shunyanam. This is the 34th verse, the last verse of the Yoga Sutras, the last verse of Kaivalya Pada. Purushartha Shunyanam. Purusha Artha. Artha means purpose. The purpose of this whole experience that you have gone through. The purpose of everything that you are going through, everything you have gone through, and everything you will go through is called Purushartha. It is the self-effort you have made to fulfill a purpose. Purushartha Shunyanam. It has been completed. Kaivalya is a state where you have completed the very purpose for which you have incarnated. Purushartha Shunyanam. It is said that there are 4 legitimate goals of human existence. Chatur Vida Purushartha. Chatur means 4, Vida means type. Purushartha, legitimate aims of human, legitimate purposes of being human, okay, of human life. Chatur Vida Purushartha. There is a concept in Indian culture. The first is Dharma. Dharma means fulfilling your responsibility. That is what Dharma means. You fulfilling your responsibility for which you have been born. Dharma. Basically common sense living. Doing the right thing for the right person at the right time in the right way. All of that becomes Dharma. The second, when you live as a human being, when you are doing the right thing at the right time in the right way for the right person, you now become eligible. So the first thing is you have to do Dharma. People forget about that. They want the next 3 without fulfilling the first one. The precondition is you have to be responsible for yourself. Dharma is the first one. Second, Artha. Artha means material prosperity. So when you fulfill your Dharma, you become eligible for material prosperity, material abundance. The second, Kama. Kama is emotional abundance and emotional prosperity, emotional fulfillment. When I say emotional abundance, you think a lot of emotions. What I mean is emotional fulfillment, emotional balance, and fulfillment of all your emotional goals. So your material goals are Artha, your emotional goals are Kama, legitimate. When is it legitimate? When you are living your Dharma. If you don't live your Dharma, but you want Artha and Kama, then it becomes illegitimate. It becomes adharmic, ayogic. And someone who doesn't want to fulfill their requirements but wants everything is called an ayogi, an anti-yogi. A yogi is one who is eligible, who is fit for it. An unfit person is called ayogi. In Tamil, we say ayokyan. Ayokyan is someone who is unfit but wants it. He is a scoundrel who doesn't do what he should do, but he wants the benefit of it. He doesn't study for the exam, but he wants gold medal. He doesn't go to work, but he wants his salary. Sounds like most human beings, okay, on this planet today. Ayokyas. Ayokya. Yokya is one who is integrated. He is yukta. Yokya is yukta, a yogi, who has brought together all aspects of himself or herself and is fulfilling the dharma and thus becoming legitimately ready to have material prosperity, material fulfillment, emotional fulfillment, and then the last one, moksha, spiritual fulfillment. Dharma, artha, kama, moksha, nam chaturvida purushartham. Dharma, artha, kama, moksha are the 4 legitimate aspects of living. Purusharthas they are called. Here Patanjali is using that same term. He says, Purushartha Shunyanam. There's nothing to be remained because you have fulfilled everything. You have fulfilled your dharma, automatically artha, kama, moksha will happen. What he then says, Gunanam Pratiprasava. The gunas, the 3 gunas, tamasika, inertia, rajasika, activity, satvika, luminosity. inertia, activity, lightness. The three gunas that are embodied in the manifest universe, which is Prakriti, and embodied in us as the individual. When you live in tune with the gunas and Prakriti, it is called Sanskriti. Sanskriti is culture, where you are living in tune with the gunas. When you live out of tune with the gunas and you make a mess of them, it is called Vikriti. Vikriti is when you have made a mess of the gunas. Vikriti, Vikruti, Vikriti. Sanskriti is culturing the gunas when you are living in tune with them. The gunas are part and parcel of the manifest universe. The gunas are part and parcel of us as a manifest being. What does he say? Gunanam prati prasava. Prati prasava. Now comes the word prasava. Prasava means to give birth. Prati prasava means the reverse of giving birth. Involution. That is why giving birth is evolution. Evolution is the moving away from the source. Involution is going back to the source. So evolution is the babies coming out of the mother's womb through the birth canal out into the world. Prati prasava is the baby says, I want to go back to the source. And like the salmon that goes up the river, the stream, trying to go back to its original nesting place where it was born, you are retracing the path back to the source. You are going back, sweet home, Om. Om, sweet home. O-M lies in H-O-M-E. That is where you are retracing your path. So prasava is to go forth. Prasava is to go forth and multiply, giving birth, to go forth and multiply, to move away from the source. The one becomes many. That is prasava. The many become one is prati prasava. The word here, prati prasava, is a very beautiful word because it means the gunas which are manifest, they are all going back to the source. I often watch some videos where people have reversed the video. So what you do is you have somebody with a bucket of water and they throw the water and then you reverse the video. So you have the water as if it's coming off the floor and coming all the way back into the bucket. This used to be used in our old Indian movies. Whenever they wanted to show, divine occurrences, they would have this type of thing happen. Or in Superman, the first movie, where he makes time go back to save his girlfriend. So everything gets reversed. They play the video in reverse. Prati Prasava is playing the video in reverse. So all the gunas that have gone out and splashed the color onto the canvas, they are all coming off the canvas and they're going back to the source and the canvas is clean now. There's no longer anything manifest because it's gone back to the source. So the gunas, they are all retracing their way back. Why are they going back? Because everything has been fulfilled. That purpose for which you have come has been fulfilled and the gunas can go back to the source. They have no job anymore. The assassin was sent to kill someone. He has finished the assassination. He can go back home. The policeman was sent to catch the criminal. He's caught the criminal. He can go back home. He doesn't stay at the site of the crime for the rest of his life. I hope he doesn't. If you have been sent to the market, supermarket to buy a kilo or a pound of potatoes, I hope you go back home with the potatoes and don't sit in the supermarket for the rest of your life with those potatoes. Your purpose of going to the supermarket was to buy it and get back home. The gunas had a purpose. Now the full purpose has been fulfilled. You don't have to be in the supermarket of this world anymore. You can go back home, sweet home. That is what Patanjali is saying. He is not talking about malls and supermarkets. That Ananda is crazy version of it. My crazy interpretation of Maharishi Patanjali is supermarkets and going back home with a pound of potatoes. Some people want a pound of flesh. That's a different one. Huh? And then you have Shakespeare talk about the pound of flesh and the Merchant of Venice, and people want that. Well, that's their perspective. Prati Prasava, Kaivalyam. So Kaivalya, I'm describing the last verse of the Kaivalya Pada. He says Kaivalya is the state where, having fulfilled the purpose, the gunas involute back into themselves and Swarupa Pratishtava. You are established in your Swarupa, your essential nature. And at that point, the highest Shakti of the Chit, it shines forth. Chitir, Chiti, Shaktir, Iti. Iti means that's all. Patanjali, the last sound he gives in the Yoga Sutra is that's all. Go home. The class finished. Iti is what he is saying at the end there. Chitir Shakti. That pure consciousness is shining and you are established in your own essential nature. There is nothing else. Now, for that state of Kaivalya to occur, he goes on to tell us a lot of things. For that to occur, he says, well, why are we not in Kaivalya? Well, very simple. There are two things. Klesha and karma. Klesha and karma are the two things that are preventing you from being in Kaivalya. Okay, who is in Kaivalya? Ishvara. Ishvara is in Kaivalya. Who is this Ishvara? Pure unmanifest consciousness. That Purusha who is pure unmanifest consciousness is Ishvara. And Ishvara is a special entity. We are all entities. But Ishvara is a special entity who is untouched by Klesha Karma. Now Patanjali talks about this in Samadhipada. This is why Patanjali, has all these cross connections when you look at the Yoga Sutra. In the Samadhipada, when he talks about the Pranava, Om, which we are going to be chanting all night soon. The Pranava, which is one of the amazing practices of Swamiji's teachings. When he talks about the Pranava, he says Pranava is the vibration of Ishvara itself. And he says, who is that Ishvara? The timeless teacher. The timeless teacher who is unblemished, beyond the Klesha and Karma, a special entity, Vishesha Purushaha, Klesha Karma Aparamishta, Purusha Vishesha Ishvaraha. Ishvara is beyond the Klesha Karma. So who are all of us? We are Ishvara plus Klesha and Karma. So the equation is made very simple here. We are Ishvara plus Klesha plus Karma. So if we work out the Klesha Karma, we once again become Ishvara and we are in Kaivalya. So ultimately the bottom line is Klesha Karma is what is binding us to something that is not who we are. Very simplistic. You will say, Dr. Ananda, is it really so simple? It is. The highest truths are simple. And if people complicate it, it means they don't know it. And we have amazing people on this planet who complicate the simplest of truths to sound wise. Klesha karma. Now, where does Patanjali come to this? He gives us a whole pada. But if you go back to the previous pada, this is the Vibhuti pada, the third chapter. Even before Patanjali starts the Kaivalya pada, the last few verses of the Vibhuti pada, he is already giving us a glimpse of all of this. In the last few verses, that is around 50, he has talked about all the siddhis and samyama and all of that. And what he says is that you come very, very close to Kaivalya. You come very close to Kaivalya. How do you get close to Kaivalya? By all your self-effort. This is called mumukshutva. Mumukshutva. And the person who has it is called a mumukshu. Mumukshu. Mumukshu is one who has this burning desire for liberation. Mumukshutva is the quality of a mumukshu, like a tattva. Mumukshutva. Mumukshutva is the quality. Mumukshu is one who has it. Now this quality, I want liberation. I will do anything for it. I want liberation. I want liberation. I'm going to work for it. That burning desire, he says, gets you to a certain spot. But then he says, at that threshold of liberation, you have to let go of it. You have to have the capacity to say, I have done my best. I am ready to leave the rest. There is a moment where your acceleration has taken you to a certain spot, and then you have to give over. He says, this is the highest vairagya. In the Samadhi Pada, he says, if you want to control the chitta vrittis and if you want to transcend them, abhyasa vairagya. Self-effort and non-attachment are the keys for it. Even there, he tells us there is the lower type of non-attachment and then there is the highest type of non-attachment, para vairagya. There is something called para vairagya. Para vairagya is the highest capacity of non-attachment. He says there is a point where you are so close to it, and he says at that point you should be able to say, if it is to manifest, let it be so, and if not, I accept whatever comes. And he says at that moment, tad vairagyadapi. This is the 50th. This is 3 and 3rd chapter, 50th verse. He says, tad vairagyadapi dosha bija kshaye kaivalyam. He says, in that moment where you say, thy will be done, presto, Kaivalya occurs. Because the doshas, all the impurities that are there, remember klesha and karma? They are the impurities. Dosha is another word for impurity. The context is impurity here, not vata pitta kapha. The context is different for the use of the word dosha. Dosha bija kshaye. He says all the impurities, there is the seed, bija. Dosha bija kshaye is destroyed. You destroy even the seed of all the impurities. And in that moment, Kaivalya occurs. Now for that to happen, he says, what you need to know is that you have to have the highest discernment, viveka. And how do you get viveka? Ashtanga yoga. Because Patanjali in sadhana pada, see again, everything is connected. People mess it up. They think, oh, that is sadhana, this is samadhi, this is kaivalya. No, no, no. Everything is interconnected with Patanjali. There are no watertight compartments. They are all interconnected. Patanjali tells us, Yoganga Anushtanat Ashuddhik Shaye. It is the 28th verse of the second pada. 28. Yoganga Anushtanat. By living and practicing and making your effort on the yoga anga, the limbs of yoga. Yoganga Anushtanat Ashuddhik Shaye. All the impurities are destroyed. Now, doesn't it sound like dosha bijak shaye that we are talking? Ashuddhik shaye, very similar. All the impurities are taken away. Jnana deepti, the higher luminosity will start to glow. Aviveka kyate, and the highest discerning capacity starts to manifest in you because the light bulb has come on. Till then, you were in darkness, you didn't know the reality. Now the light bulb has come on. What puts the light bulb on? The yoga anga anushtana. By living the yama niyama asana pranayama pratyahara dharana dhyana samadhi, which are the 8 limbs, ashtangani. Through those 8 limbs, we are getting rid of the impurities, that which is not us. The light bulb comes on and suddenly the highest discernment comes. And that highest discernment is what is required at that threshold of Kaivalya. Because otherwise you don't know what is Kaivalya. Because he makes a very beautiful concept here in Vibhuti Pada, 55th verse of Vibhuti Pada, 3rd chapter, 55. Sattva Purushayo Shuddhi Samye Kaivalyam. Sattva and Purusha. So what is Sattva? Sattva is the purest aspect of the manifest reality. The manifest reality which yoga accepts. Vedanta denies the manifest reality. Yoga accepts a manifest reality. That is a very big difference between the perspective of yoga and Vedanta. Vedanta says nothing exists except the Brahman. Yoga says all of this exists for your experience and to help you in your liberation. This is the big difference between Vedanta and yoga perspectives. There are a lot of similarities, but this is a very important difference. The manifest universe, the reality which is manifest, the purest aspect is called Sattva. So the purest of the pure. When we talk of the gunas, we can say the 3 get expanded like a Christmas decoration. You know, you have these flat Christmas decorations and you pull them apart and they expand and then you hang them up. Something like an accordion, you know, it's like this and then you pull it apart and all the layers open up. So you have 3 gunas, you expand into 9. The 3 gunas expand into 9. So you have tamasika tamas at the bottom, rajasika tamas, satvika tamas. So 3 aspects of tamas. Tamasika tamas, rajasika tamas, satvika tamas. Then in the rajas you have tamasika rajas, rajasika rajas, satvika rajas. Then in sattvas you have tamasika sattvas, rajasika sattvas, and satvika sattva. That satvika sattva, which is the highest level of purity, is called sattva by Maharishi Patanjali. He says sattva, which is the highest level of purity, and purusha. Now what has happened? You have prakriti, you are in prakriti, and you have come to the highest level of purity. And there is a purusha, which is pure consciousness, pure unmanifest consciousness. Here you have here you have the impure manifest reality, and you have come to the purest aspect of it. The purest aspect of the manifest reality and the pure consciousness, he says, when they are equal, sattva purushayo shuddhi samye kaivalyam. This is the last verse of the third pada. People think Kaivalya is only in the fourth pada. No, third pada itself he has given us. I sometimes wonder why he gave us the fourth pada, because this itself is more than enough. You purify your consciousness until your consciousness is at the same level of purity as the pure consciousness, and presto, Kaivalya occurs. Because there's no distinction anymore. As long as your consciousness is impure, there is you and the pure consciousness. There is, light passes through a medium. So you have light passing through glass, light passing through water, light passing through air. The denser the medium, the more the deviation of the light. This is pure physics. The denser the medium, the more the deviation of the light. And that is why the light ray, in school we have always done this. We put a glass bar or we put a prism and we have a source of light, and then you look through it and you put a pin. I hope you have all done it. I used to enjoy this in school. Nowadays the kids don't seem to do it. I don't know, what they think they need to know. They need to know things that they will never use in their life. Give them life skills, for God's sake. Give kids life skills in school, not nonsensical stuff that clogs up the memory power. Sorry, overloads the system. The light ray coming through a glass bar, which is a dense medium, glass is a dense medium. What happens is that the light ray gets deviated. Now, if you look at that same light ray through a glass of water, and you take water and you have the light going through, the deviation will be less, and the deviation in air will be even less. So we say, oh, there's no deviation in air. If you actually look at it, even in air, there's deviation. The thing is, air is less dense than water, which is less dense than glass. The denser the medium, the more the deviation. Now let's change the word light and put consciousness. So you have the pure consciousness of Purusha coming to us, and the more dense we are, the more it is deviant. The more the duality occurs. What is deviation? Duality. Deviation of consciousness is a sense of duality. The more dense you are, the more separate you will feel from the universe in which you live. Full stop. Iti. Huh? The whole process of yoga is to undense you. I don't think that English word exists. I've just created it. Undense you. Huh? Disdense you. I know there's distance, disdense, undense. It is the process of undensification, a new word. Huh? You are undensing yourself, not undressing yourself, but undensing yourself. Huh? It was funny to watch the American inauguration, and the guy with the huge mittens become quite a funny thing. Most of us have lead shields. The light cannot even pass through us, let alone deviate. It bounces off us like a mirror. Light bounces off us. Pure consciousness bounces off us. We need to, that sattva, our sattva, and what is it? Ashtanga, the angas, yoganga, anushthanat, ashuddhikshaye. You remove all the opaqueness. You remove all the impurities. You remove all the coloring. You remove all that is not the consciousness. And suddenly your sattva and the Purusha, they are equal. And at that moment, there is no duality. That is Kaivalya. Patanjali has given very, very clear perspective on this. He says, one has to be very careful here, because this highest level of consciousness, You have to be very careful, because in that highest level of consciousness, you are no longer caught in the past or the future. Kshana pratayo, kshana tat kramayo samyamat vivekajam jnanam. He says, when you start to focus more and more on the now, that viveka starts to grow. As long as you are in the past or the future, where is your viveka? You are in the now. That is where the viveka jnanam starts to come. Now I want to go back a little bit here, because Patanjali's teachings are so beautiful. And Michael had a question, why was the human being placed in this predicament? Well, I've often asked that question. Why not just remain in Kaivalya forever? But you know, the universe can never be static. And that is why, just as in the ocean, the waves have to come to the shore and go back. The waves have to come to the shore and go back. The waves have to come to the shore and go back. The water has to evaporate into the sky and come back as rain. That the universe wants something to manifest. And that is why this has to happen. It cannot just say that it's all done. Now, hypothetically, there is the possibility that if every being attains Kaivalya, nothing has to happen anymore. Hypothetically, yes. Now that's a very long way off, trillions of years away or something. I don't know what it's like in human time. But because Maharishi Patanjali says that when you escape out of this, it doesn't exist for you anymore. But he says it still exists for everybody who's left behind. So it's not that the show stops because you have come out of the theater. You have come out of the theater. For you, the show has stopped. But for everybody who's in the theater, the show is still continuing. And it's actually very interesting when you think about it. Now, Patanjali gives us an answer in the sense of, he says, why does everything exist? He gives us an answer. He says, for your experience and liberation. Bhoga apavargartam drishyam. So he does give us an answer to that. But why we need to keep on coming out of that oneness into duality, I don't really think there's a direct answer given. I think we have to infer from the teachings an answer to it. I just wanted to go through a few verses here, which are very, very beautiful in the Kaivalya Pada. And one of the answers that may come for Michael's question is in the second verse of the Kaivalya Pada, where Patanjali tells us, Jatyanta parinama prakritya apurat. He says that nature doesn't like a vacuum. It doesn't like a vacuum. So transformation through multiple forms occurs as a result of compensatory mechanisms of nature, because it doesn't want a vacuum. And this is what we often find, that the moment space is created, something has to manifest in it. And nature, the universe nature abhors a vacuum. Basically, that is how you would understand that. And maybe that is why this has to keep on happening for us. There cannot be a vacuum. And na shunyam na shunyam. There's a very nacha shunyam. Na shunyam, nacha shunyam is how Adi Shankara mentions it. He says, neither is it void nor non-void. It's a very interesting statement he makes in the Dasha Sloki. One of the statements Patanjali gives us in Kaivalya Pada is, he says that the obstacles are there. What are the obstacles? All that which is not us. And he says, just as the farmer removes obstacles to the growth of the crops, we need to remove the obstacles to our spiritual growth. So step by step through Viveka, we need to be removing all that is not us. And the example here, again commonly quoted, is of making a stone sculpture. And you are chipping away on all that which is not the idol, and finally the idol appears. You have not actually created the idol. You have removed from that block of stone all that which is not the idol, all that which is not the statue. And the same process is a process being suggested here. There is a very beautiful concept of klesha and karma. And Patanjali says, well, karma, and in the yoga step by step, Swamiji talks about karma over the next few lessons. So we'll have a lot of karma discussions. Karma can be white, black, or the middle. He says karma can be shukla. Shukla means white, which basically means the good karma. It can be Krishna, which is dark, which is the negative karma. And then he says it can be the in-between. 3 types of karma. The white, black, and the gray. White, black, gray karma, if you want to keep it that way. He says karma is Shukla and Krishna for everybody. But for the yogi, he says it is neither white nor black. Ashukla karma, ashukla akrishnam yogina trivida mitaresham. For others, it is threefold. So the concept of karma as for the yogi going beyond karma, which is one of the aspects that pulls us back. He says, why does this threefold karma occur? In the 8th verse, he gives a statement. He says, it's in the 8th verse. I'm still, that's what I was looking at, the wrong page. Tata tad vipakanu gunanam eva abhivyaktihi vasananam. He says, why does this karma, threefold karma, afflict us? He says, because of vasana. Now, there are 2 things here which Patanjali again and again comes to: samskara and vasana. Samskaras are conditioned habits. Vasanas are inherent tendencies. And these samskara vasana coupling drives not just this lifetime, but every lifetime, and all the experiences of lifetimes that you have perceived and not yet perceived. He tells us, Jati Desha Kala Vyavahitanam api anantaryam smriti samskarayo eka rupatva. They are as if they are continuing in one. There is a constant continuation of samskara vasanas that are driving us. He says they are eternal. They are eternal. The vasanas are eternal. Now that is the problem. The vasana samskaras, they are eternal. Tasam anaditvam cha ashisho nityatvat. He says, what is driving them? The desire for survival. What is desire for survival? Abhinivesha klesha. Why do you have the desire for survival? Avidya is the root klesha. So the connection between the klesha and the karma driven by the samskara vasana is brought out by Maharishi Patanjali. Which is why he says they are held together by the cause-effect relationship. Hetu pala ashraya alambanai. That they are held together. The kleshas and the karma. Klesha moola karma shaya. Drishta adrishta janma vedaniya hai. He says, all the experiences of the lifetimes you know and the lifetimes you don't know are because of klesha and karma. And they are driving the vasana and samskara that continue. We say, when you die, you cannot take anything with you. Well, your samskaras and vasanas continue. That is the Indian cultural statement. And the samskara vasanas determine what's going to happen in the next lifetime. This is why Buddha, before he became Buddha, had to go through so many lifetimes and so many forms. The Bodhisattva had to go through so many incarnations. You had the elephant, you had the rabbit, you had all these stories. And these are not just stories, these are experiences that are enabling you to finally become one day the Buddha. The Buddha became the Buddha not just in one lifetime. People forget that. It is not just the effort of one lifetime that is making you the Buddha. It is the efforts made over many, 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 many lifetimes. Now this becomes a bit difficult because we say we have trouble with this lifetime. What do I do with the others? It becomes a bit difficult. And again, cultural contexts and religious contexts often create hurdles in the understanding of this. Patanjali goes on to say many, many things, and I'm just trying to give you a few verses. There's a beautiful verse, 14. The 14th verse of Kaivalya Pada, he says, Parinama ekatvat vastu tattvam. He says the essence remains one despite the different stages of transformation. I talked about the Bodhisattva. There is that continuation, the essence remains one. But one time you are an elephant, one time you are a goat, one time you are a human being, one time you are a blue whale, one time you are an otter. Okay, fine, no issues. But the essence remains the same. It's a very beautiful concept here. Very, very beautiful concept. And this month's Yoga Life will have an article on Guru and how Dattatreya and all of these people, they talked about Guru from so many contexts, where so many things can be your teacher when your consciousness awakens to it. It's the same concept here. Patanjali then gives us a very beautiful psychological thing in the 15th verse. He says, the same object, Vastu Samya, Vastu is the Samya, it is one, Chitta Bedat, Tayor Vibhakta Pantaha. He says, the same objects appear differently to different minds because of differences in perception. And this is why on this planet, every mosquito has its point of view. Every amoeba has its point of view. No wonder every human being has their own point of view. Because based on where we are, we perceive things differently. Not, the thing is the same. He says, Vastu Tattvam, it is one. But Vastu Samye Chitta Bedat Tayor Vibhakta Pantaha. And that is why he says, thank God for this. Or thank Purusha for it. He says, because if an object depended on any one mind for its existence, it would not exist when that mind doesn't perceive it. So here Patanjali is going into amazing modern thought patterns. These are patterns that only in recent years have come out through quantum physics and so many new concepts that are coming, parapsychology and all that. You're starting to have concepts where an object does not depend on any one mind for its existence. And he asks a question, he says, what would happen when that mind does not cognize it anymore? This is like all the small kids. We recently had Dr. Balaji stay with us for a few days and saw his little boy many times. And the little boy, whenever he gets a bit shy, he goes this. The kid is like, oh, now you don't exist. None of you exist. Kids do this. We talk about the cat closing its eyes when you find it drinking milk in the kitchen. It closes its eyes and it says, you don't exist. Well, the universe is not like that. You don't depend on only the cat's perspective. There are multiple perceptions happening that are enabling stuff to manifest. It's a very beautiful concept here because, we often think if I am not there, this universe will not exist. After me, the deluge. One of those French narcissist kings had that. After me, the deluge. As if, he's long gone and everything still continues much better than when that guy was in power for sure. You recently had a guy in the White House who thought the same. He didn't even have the courtesy to attend the inaugural of the next person. Great. I just love, it's all me, and if I'm not there, nothing exists. Well, the world's going to continue. Swamiji used to always tell me that. He said, Ananda, if you don't do what you are to do, somebody else will do it. If you don't do what you have to do, somebody else will do it, and then you will regret not doing it. I will rephrase that, paraphrase it. If you are not the person you need to be, somebody else will become that person, and then you will feel bad about it. Be the person you are to be. Do that for which you are here. Fulfill your dharma. Because what we find is, there was a time in the ashram where Renukaka, my dear adopted sister, was there. And I remember thinking, oh, if Renukaka, because she kept the ashram going amazingly well. And I was like, if Renukaka is not here, what will happen to the ashram? Well, the ashram continued. I have been in institutions where, oh, if this person is not there, the institution will collapse. And often the institution goes to greater heights without them. But our ego feels that if I am not there, it's all going to collapse. I have had a few of those experiences, okay? When I came out of my last job in Jipmer, I thought, oh, everything will collapse. They still have the yoga center running, okay? They still have it running, and in its own way, it is fulfilling something. So, this whole idea, if I am not there, it's not going to be there. Come on, what nonsensical, egotistical, mental chitta chatter. Because this understanding that there's a constant perspective that is coming from all the perceptions coming together. But what he says, everything is changing. He said, Purusha alone in 18. Purusha, the Lord of consciousness, the pure consciousness. And Michael just been asking about Brahman's vision. This is the same here. That Purusha has eternal wisdom that is beyond all the transformation. Because we are constantly transforming, and that is why what you thought as a small kid is different than what you think right now. And what you will think in 5 years from now, hopefully will be different because of the transformative parinama process. But the Purusha is non-changing. The Purusha, the pure consciousness, is non-changing. It is behind everything. And hence, it has eternal wisdom. We don't have eternal wisdom because we are constantly changing. And this is a very, very beautiful aspect, because all the manipulations of the three gunas, the Purusha is beyond it. And Patanjali goes on to give us some very, very amazing aspects in the 22nd verse. He says, through oneness with the pure consciousness, Chite aprati samkramayo tadakara pattau swabuddhi samvedanam. He says, we realize the causal self by awareness with pure consciousness. This is where we start to attune our perspective to the universal perspective. Attuning our perspective to the universal perspective, because at that point, there is a sense of comprehensiveness. Till that point, it is incomplete. When we attune ourselves to the universal perspective, at that point, comprehensiveness comes. And that is why we often start to say, oh, the mind is so bad. We say the mind is like a monkey. It is like a drunken monkey stung by a scorpion on a hot tin roof, all that type of stuff. But Patanjali says, well, the mind is good. He says, the mind is made up of innumerable tendencies. All the vasanas and samskaras are there, yet serves the purpose of attaining the highest. It's a very beautiful concept in 24th verse. He says, Tadasankyaye vasanabihi chitramapi parartatvam samyatya karitvat. It is a very beautiful concept here that despite all of this, The mind is an amazing tool for us to be on the journey. And that is why it is not to say, oh, the mind is this and that. Okay, we have to transcend it. We have to transform it. We have to open it up. And that is why then he makes a beautiful concept, this vivek, this highest viveka. He says, Vishesha darshana atma bhava bhavana nivrittihi. In the 25th verse of the Kaivalya Pada. He says, there's a sense of separatedness. But he says, when you have the discerning vision, Vishesha darshana atma bhava bhavana nivrittihi. There's no sense of I am different anymore. This is where that highest perspective, Swamiji has been talking about the yoga drishti. This is the actual yoga drishti. Atma bhava bhavana nivrittihi. You have transcended the sense of me and you have become endowed with a bigger perspective. And then it's very interesting because we had this come earlier and I was waiting for this to come back. Gitan had a statement. He said, like going into space from Earth's gravity. This is what the 26th verse says, Gitan. He says, Tada vivekaninam. When that discerning intellect comes alive, Kaivalya pragbaram chittam, we start getting pulled into Kaivalya as if by a gravitational force of Kaivalya itself. I love this mental image. What has happened is, as long as you are down on Earth, you're stuck with the gravity. You get on your space shuttle and the rocket propulsion of mumukshutva, abhyasa, takes you up into space and then you put away all the unnecessary parts of the rocket are dropped. And then the satellite is there in Earth's orbit and suddenly it is just floating in Earth's orbit. It doesn't keep shooting past it. It's now just caught into that outer orbit and it's just there. The satellite is there. This is what he is talking about. You have got so close to Kaivalya that this discernment, Viveka Khyati, and that Viveka Khyati is what Ashtanga Yoga exists for. Yoganga Anushtana Dashuddhi Kshaye Jnana Deepti Viveka Khyati. Going back to Sadhana Pada. The whole purpose is to develop Viveka Khyati. And as that, he says, Tada Viveka Nimnam. Kaivalya pragbharam chittam. You are just pulled into Kaivalya. You don't have to do anything anymore. You just have to be. And that is where the doing gives way to being. This is where do your best moves into leave the rest. Because if you do not leave the rest, you cannot be pulled by that gravitational pull because you will overshoot it. There is that point where you have to let go. The plane that is running down at a great speed, the runway has to let go of the runway in order for it to fly. The plane just keeps running down the runway, is going to crash into the wall at the end of the airport. That is not the purpose to keep pushing, pushing, pushing. There's a point where the push has to move into from push to let go. And that is where do your best becomes leave the rest. Abhyasa becomes vairagya. Mumukshutva, I am going to make it. You get to that threshold and then you say, thy will be done. If you keep on pushing, you are going to spoil the whole thing. And this is where people, there are sometimes, I've seen that with painters and sculptors, they make a perfect image and then instead of stopping, they keep trying to work on it and then they spoil it. I did that a lot as a kid. I make a beautiful watercolor painting in school. And just when it was perfect, I decided to try to correct it or improve it a bit more and made a mess of it. Every time in my exams, at the end of the exam, I would go back and start correcting my previous answers. And every time I did that, I would change a correct answer to a wrong answer. And so I learned at the end of the exam, do not go back and review your answers because most probably you did it right the first time. And second time, you're going to overthink it and make a mess of it. And many people do this. If it is perfect, leave it as it is. When something is working, please do not meddle with it. There are people who set out, they are called consultants. They go out to meddle with things that are already perfect and create chaos. They come into institutions that are already working and make it a mess. If something is working, please let it work. Very important that we have this. I tell you, a lot of times we make it. And that is why Patanjali says, now at this time, what happens? The samskaras that were hidden, you have dealt with a lot of stuff. At this moment, the ones which were, like seeds, suddenly they start to sprout. This is the point where you have killed off all the, zombies in the movie, and you think you have had it done, and you're just walking out the door, and suddenly a hand comes through the floor and captures your feet. He says, this is where you have to be very careful. He says, at that point, you have to again use the methodology you used before for the kleshas. You have to go back and work on it, because otherwise they are going to again pull you back. And in that small gap, he actually says you have to be very careful, because he says, if you are not careful, you will be pulled back. There's a small gap, and suddenly it's that being careless towards the end. Just when you are going to touch the, I've seen some beautiful videos of guys in races, and they're going to win the race, and then they turn around and they're like, ha, 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 and the guy who was second crosses first. Huh? The guy on the scooter and, is going to win the race, and he decides to show off for the cameras, and ha, 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 and the guy second became first. Carelessness spoils everything. And it's like we say, you cook a beautiful meal and put sand in it. You have cooked a beautiful meal of a beautiful recipe and you throw sand in it. Patanjali says, pay attention at that time. Be careful at that time. And he says, it is at that point where you have that paravairagya, that suddenly the dharma mega samadhi occurs. This is verse 29. Dharma mega samadhi occurs. Dharma mega samadhi is the rain cloud of virtue. The rain cloud of virtue, dharma mega samadhi. And what it does is, because of this highest vivekam, it cleans away the klesha and karma. In verse 30, he tells us, Tata klesha karma nivrittihi. Now let's go back a little bit. If you remember what I said earlier, we are Ishvara plus klesha karma. Ishvara is us minus klesha karma. And Patanjali in verse 30 of Kaivalya Pada says that dharma mega samadhi, which has been brought about by the highest viveka kyati, he says it washes away the klesha karmas completely. Whatever residue was there, you have been given a good car wash, the final car wash. Tata klesha karma nivritti. And he says at that point, by the dissolution of all impurities, tada sarva varana, mala petasya, mala is impurity. All the type of impurities that are there, sarva varana mala petasya, they are washed away. Jnanasya, the highest wisdom is dawning in us. Anantyat jnaya malpam. He says at this point, the klesha karma are washed away. The highest wisdom dawns, and there is little to be known. There is little to be known. It's a beautiful jnaya malpam. Jnayam alpam. Alpa means very small-minded. Alpa buddhi, we say, someone who has very small-mindedness. Alpam means few, little. Jnaya malpam, there is little to be known, which basically means you know everything at that point. You have become omniscient. Beautiful state. You become all-knowing. Who's all-knowing? God, the divine, the universe, Ishvara, Purusha, whatever you want to call it, Brahman. At that point, the klesha karma nivritti has occurred. The highest wisdom has dawned and little remains to be known. And this is where the gunas, they start to go back. And in 33, he says, Kshana pratiyogi parinama aparanta. You have gone beyond parinama. Parinama is transformation. As long as you are in Prakriti, you are bound by parinama. You are bound by transformation. Parinama aparanta. You are going beyond it. You are beyond all transformation. You are beyond the gunas. You have become guna atita or nirguna. And you are in the eternal now. Shana pratiyogi parinama aparanta nirgrahya kramaha. You are in the eternal now. You have become timeless. You have become all-knowing. You have transcended the gunas. You have transcended time. You have transcended the transformative process itself. Kaivalya, Ishvara. You know, this whole concept of Kaivalya to me is such a beautiful concept, because here everything that was making you think that I am me has been eradicated. The klesha karma bondage has been liberated. The samskara vasana linkage has been broken. The false sense of identity to the misguided created self has been eradicated. Where does all of this come? It all comes from the basic effort to live the limbs of yoga. This is not a shortcut. This is not a shortcut. People want a shortcut. Shortcut to samadhi, shortcut to kaivalya. Well, there's a shortcut to hell for sure. Shortcut to samadhi they want, shortcut to liberation. It is paid for by self-effort. The currency for liberation is self-effort. You pay for liberation through self-effort. Self-effort, purushartha, the effort you make. And that is why the Ashtanga, Yama Niyama, the Adhikara Yoga that make you an Adhikarin, fit for the highest aspect of yoga. Without the Yama Niyama, you cannot be an Adhikarin. You are not fit for the highest aspects. You can do asana, you can do pranayama, you can be on the cover of Yoga Today, you can be Yoga International, Yoga Life. It doesn't matter what you are the cover of. You can be the cover page of Vogue. Who cares what it is? Playboy, nude yoga, Playboy. Why not? You could be the cover of anything. Who cares about it? Your video could be 3 trillion times popular. But if you are not an Adhikarin, Kaivalya is never going to be on your menu. Kaivalya. And this is why I think if you ask me what is the one thing that you really work towards, I would say Kaivalya. How do you work towards it? By trying to live my dharma every moment of my life. When I live my dharma, when I am trying to be myself every moment of my life, I firmly have the conviction, the shraddha, and putting in the virya, the effort. I am convinced that Kaivalya will be there one day. We shall overcome, we shall overcome, we shall overcome one day. That day will come. Kaivalya will be there. Now here the big difference is the effort we make. And that is where the effort that we make is the currency. It's very interesting that Ingen says it resembles the Christian notion of salvation. I don't know enough of that to, talk about it. But Swamiji used to talk about a few of these aspects, cross-cultural, cross-religious aspects. Swamiji had enough of that knowledge, and Ammaji had enough knowledge to talk about it. But here it is not, it's again like that Santa Claus song, be good for goodness sake. Huh? Be good for goodness sake, not for something else sake. And you are fulfilling your dharma, because the more you fulfill your dharma, you eradicate your karma. Dharma is the vaccine and antidote to karma. And the more we live our dharma, the more we burn up the karma that has been there, and we prevent new karma from forming. We have a whole baggage of karma we carry with us. We have to first burn that out. Then we have to make sure we are not creating anymore. The sabija karma which we are carrying, we have to work out. Prarabdha karma, which is rubbing it into us. I say prarabdha karma is rubbing it into us. It's really giving us a tough time because it's manifesting. And then kriyamana karma, which you are making now. So important. I say, even if you cannot eradicate your past karma, at least stop making some new ones. Even if you cannot rectify your past mistakes, at least you can stop making new ones. Because where do you make the mistake? In the present moment? Where does dharma lie? In the present moment. Where does the power of choice lie? In the present moment. And that is why the more we become self-reflective, the more we can deal with this. And again, a question that Sue had asked about, does the universe get Kaivalya? Well, the manifest universe can get Kaivalya. The manifest universe is Prakriti. So, well, if everybody gets Kaivalya, then the manifest universe doesn't exist anymore. So, hypothetically, yes, that is a plausibility. But as I said, Patanjali is very clear. He says it doesn't exist for you anymore, but people who are enjoying the show, let them enjoy it. Now, it becomes a bit tough as a human being in a social structure. It becomes a bit tough in human being in social structure, I'll tell you that much, because we often have to live with people who are on different planets. And that does make it a bit difficult, okay? So people say, then what do we do? Well, Patanjali has given us the 4 attitudes which we talked about in yoga psychology. Chatur Bhavana, the Brahma Viharas of the Buddhist aspects. Maitri Karuna Mudito Pekshana. Start to bring them in. Start to bring Pratipaksha into your life. And again, remember, I'm always asked, because in Indian culture, before people get married, the families match horoscopes. There's a lot of horoscope matching in India. And they say, oh, 10 out of 10 points are matching for this couple, so get them married. And then, 20 years down the line, the couple is like, God knows what was matching in our horoscopes because we are totally incompatible. And I have people ask me, they say, we have everything is supposed to be matching, but nothing matches. And I said, well, you have got it all wrong. Because matching horoscopes was not to make life easy. Matching horoscopes was never about making life easy. Sangeeta does a lot of astrology stuff, and sometime in the near future, Sangeeta and I will have a book on yoga, yantra, and astrology and other things coming out. That's a seed of a distant baby which has been planted and is moving on. It will happen. But I think Sangeeta has to come back to India for a few months for that to happen, because you need to brainstorm a few things. But you know, all this matching was not to make life easy. The matching means that you being with this person is going to help you burn out your karma better than any other way. That is what it was about. The matching was the universe saying, if you are with this person, you will have enough of burning out of your karma that potentially you will not have to carry much karma to your next lifetime. So the relationship was not meant to be easy. Relationships are not meant to be easy. People can write thousands of books on that. I don't care. Relationships are there for us to help each other on our journey. Relationships are there for us to help each other on our journey, ironing out all that is not us. Swamiji's beautiful statement. He said, if you think you are perfect, just get married. And then Kalavati, the last time I was in the UK and I said this, she said, yes, Dr. Ananda, and if you think your marriage is perfect, just have kids. And I think that is just such a wise combination there, seriously. Because Swamiji used to say, get married and you'll have somebody there to tell you every day that you are not perfect. And give you a mirror. A relationship is a mirror onto yourself. Can we understand a relationship as a mirror onto ourselves so that we start to trim away that which is not us, so that we can start to emerge into the best version of ourselves as a result of that relationship? It doesn't matter whether it is a husband-wife relationship, a partnership, a business relationship, teacher-student. I tell you, so many of my students continue to teach me more than I can ever teach them in this lifetime. Because they teach me about myself. They show me aspects of myself that I would not see if it weren't for them. And when you start to reflect, is their perspective valid? It's a good question to ask yourself. The moment somebody says something to you, instead of saying, oh, you are idiot, I am perfect. Take a step in. Is their perspective valid? Where is that perspective coming from? And when you start to question yourself that way, you can start to iron out many flaws in yourself. You will start to see things that you were neglecting, and you can start to work on those. In the last 3 decades, oh my God, thousands of fault lines I repaired thanks to my students who have given me back things. People in my life who have given me back things which may have been pleasant or unpleasant. Klishta, aklishta, Patanjali's term. That which is pleasant or that which is not pleasant. The painful and the non-painful. Klishta, aklishta. Yet, it is good. Mayank has a question. Is there a thin line between Viveka and Abhyasa? How do we differentiate? Well, Viveka and Abhyasa, I'm not too sure whether you want to say Vairagya and Abhyasa, but Viveka is discernment. Vairagya is non-attachment. A dispassionate perspective is Vairagya. And for Viveka, you need Vairagya. Because you cannot have Viveka without Vairagya. Without non-attachment, you cannot have objectivity and metacognition. That space has to be there for the higher discernment to manifest. But for that to be put into action, you need Abhyasa. So Abhyasa is the active part. Vairagya is the part that can give a gap. And Viveka is where you start to understand through the gap whether your effort is in the right direction or not. I'm going to repeat that again. Abhyasa is the effort you are making. Vairagya is the gap you have. And Viveka is the higher perspective on whether your effort is in the right direction or not. Abhyasa, Vairagya, and Viveka, they can all come together very beautifully. And this Viveka is a capacity of self-reflection. Viveka is a beautiful capacity of self-reflection. And that self-reflection can only come when you stop identifying and attaching to your own perspective. As long as you are locked in your perspective, you will never have Viveka. Because that attachment will cloud your perspective. People often translate Vairagya as detachment. And I think we have done a disservice to the word by using detachment. It is not detachment, it is non-attachment. Detachment is uncaring, insensitive. Non-attachment is caring and sensitive. There's a big difference in the way those words are used. It is like the issue we nowadays have with Viveka, and you read all the old essays and books which call it discrimination. And the moment you say the word discrimination, you go off onto such a tangent. Discernment is what Viveka is. Discernment. You have to be able to discern, just like the swan. And Michael has a nice article in February Yoga Life, which you will all get soon, on the swan, the Hamsa, the Paramahamsa, which is the higher perspective. Someone who can see the bigger perspective, someone who has grown into the higher perspective. That is where suddenly the Paramahamsa comes alive. It is not just another job title. You have a lot of people running around calling themselves Hamsa and Paramahamsa. It's not a job title. It is not a self title to be given. Sangeeta has a question, a chicken egg question. See, you have already given me the answer. If you call it a chicken egg question, then you know that it's just going to go in circles. But let's see. Klesha, karma and samskara are the klesha, karma common to humanities and samskara to the individuals. Okay, it's a good one. Let me put it this way. The principle of klesha and karma will be common to everyone. The principles are common, but the way the klesha and karma manifest will be individualized. So the manifestation of klesha karma will be individualized. The principle is universal. Samskaras are very individualistic. Now, when I say individualistic, let me expand that individual into family, culture. So certain families will have a common samskara. Certain cultures will have a common samskara. Certain religions will have a common samskara. Certain genotypes will have a common samskara. So, but samskaras are more personalized. Same with vasanas also. Vasanas and samskaras are much more personalized to the individual or small groups of individuals. The klesha and karma are more generalized. The way they manifest, the intensity with which they manifest may be individualized. I think this is how I would put it. I've tried to address that question, Sangeeta. Thanks for that question, because klesha, karma, samskara, vasana, these are really, really tough. And as Soundarajan says, like water in the lotus leaf, non-attachment. The water comes onto the lotus leaf and is just a drop. It doesn't stick to it. Non-stickiness. Vairagya is non-stickiness. The non-sticky cookware is Vairagya cookware, and somebody will trademark it. Vairagya cookware, the non-stick cookware. That's the next one you will see happening. I just love the way we human beings trademark and patent and, oh my God, copyright everything. In fact, I was watching a funny movie yesterday. It's a Hindi movie called Oh My God, and it's quite a comedy. Paresh Rawal and Akshay Kumar. And in that, there's a statement where someone says, we have a copyright on God. We have a copyright on God. And I thought that's just so human. So human that, even that which cannot be put in a box, we put in a box. Well, I've tried to do justice to this topic today. Kaivalya, as I started off with a disclaimer, is something I have not experienced, and I can only conceptualize it. I can only give you my perspective on it. My perspective is not the perspective by any yardstick. It is my personal perspective from where I am now. My perspective in 10 years from now may be different. When I read through my Yoga Darshan book, my perspective's quite different. That's 10 years ago. And it's nice to see how with time, with experience, our perspective changes. But the perspective on Kaivalya I've tried to give you is a perspective that for me is a living reality. It is a living reality. It is not, though I say it is hypothetical, though I say it is a bit theoretical, I would say for me it's a living reality. Kaivalya is a living reality. And every aspect of yoga, and what is yoga? Life. So every aspect of life is actually preparing us for that moment of Kaivalya. And Swamiji used to often make a statement. He used to say, it doesn't matter how many lifetimes it took you to get to Kaivalya, because once you are there, you are in the eternal now. So it doesn't matter whether it took you 33 or 33 million, because you are in the eternal now, so it doesn't matter anymore. And I think that's a beautiful statement. It's a beautiful statement. And he used to talk about the concept of a sadhaka who went to his guru. The grace of the guru in this, of course, is there, which I have talked about when I've talked about guru itself. But the sadhaka goes to the guru and says, Guruji, how many lifetimes will it take me to get to Kaivalya? And the guru says, 39. And the guy gets so depressed. He's like, oh my God, this is never going to happen. And, oh, 39 more lifetimes. And he's so sad. Another sadhaka comes to the guru and says, Guruji, how many lifetimes is it going to take me for Kaivalya? And Guruji says, 998. And the guy's like, wow, only 998. Wow, Guruji, this is so wonderful. Only 998 more lifetimes to Kaivalya. And presto, he attains Kaivalya in that moment. And Swamiji used to talk about that because he said, we often get so limited in this perspective. And when we realize how fortunate we are, when we realize what a blessing it is to be alive, what a blessing it is to be alive. Never, never discount that blessing. Never discount that blessing to be alive, to have life. And as Swamiji would say, the universe has given you life. You owe life everything. Life doesn't owe you anything. People run around thinking life owes them everything. No, you have been given life. You owe life everything. And as I told Amma before I came up for class today, I said, you have given me everything. What can I give back to you? How can I ever give back enough when you have given me everything? As we say, Tvameva sarvam mama deva deva. You are my everything. Tvameva sarvam. What can we give back? Swamiji used to joke about that. He said at Guru Dakshina, people would come and give him flowers out of his own garden. They just pluck flowers in the garden as they walked up and come and give him his own flowers from his own garden as Guru Dakshina. And he said, I know what God feels like, because we take things to God and say, hey, I am offering you all of this. And God is like, that already belongs to me. It already belongs to me. And you are giving it to me with this load of egotistical BS. I am giving you. Flowers of God's own garden being given to God. Swamiji used to often joke after Guru Dakshina. He said, I know what God feels like. Well, what can we offer? Love, gratitude, our own self. And when Amma ji did her training with Swamiji, at the end of the 6 months, they had the Guru Dakshina and there was a big basket kept in front of Swamiji where the students would come and put the fruits and all the offerings. And Amma went and sat inside that basket. Swamiji said, Meenakshi, do you know what you are doing? Meena, he used to call. He said, Meena, do you know what you are doing? She said, yes. He said, okay, no escape. Huh? Her Guru Dakshina to Swamiji was her life. I think that's a good place to end today. Can we offer our life as a life of service, as a life of love, a life of sharing, back to life itself? We will close here officially, and I would just like to invite you to join us on February 2nd night and 3rd morning for the all-night Om chanting. We'll keep you updated on the plans which we are finalizing for that, and give people an experience of being in the ashram without being in the ashram. The Zoom Gurukula, the Zoom womb is making it happen. And we are just looking at some practicalities. And thank you for being you and enabling me to be myself. Om Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu Sarve Janaha Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. Om. Be happy, be healthy, and be wise. Third one is a bit tough, but anyway, let's all make an effort. See you all, love you all too much. Love you as much as I love myself. And that's a lot.